The University of California has cracked down hard on the protests. They have used the police. In one instance, counter-protesters are allowed to run rampant on pro-Palestinian side for several hours.
Are you on? Which side are you on?
The big political topic right now in the news is obviously what's going on in Gaza and Palestine, the assault by the Israeli government. And it's something that, the labor movement has, to its credit, kind of broken with its own history in coming out in defense of human rights internationally and supporting a ceasefire, however tepid that support is. That is the position of the mainstream, of the vast majority of workers, of unions representing the vast majority of union workers in this country. And in an escalation of that support, UAW Local 4811 at the University of California has gone on strike, broadly supportive of, Palestine and in opposition to the, the attacks by Israel on the Gaza Strip, but specifically for the free speech rights of their members and their communities on college campuses and at the University of California college campuses, where the police have been called to repress the protests in the communities. And, so Adam, I gave you some homework to do a little bit more reading than I had time to do about this, the 4811's, their struggles with the university. So, walk us through some of the last few weeks at the University of California as it relates to the protests and the system's response, the University of California system's response to those protests.
Yeah, so I wanted to first just distinguish that this is an unfair labor practices strike. There's different things that prompt strikes. Most people are familiar with strikes happening when a contract has expired, like the UAW's Big Three stand-up strike. But in this case, this is a strike over unfair labor practices that the union has charged the University of California system with, doing. And so there has been, as most listeners know, a growing movement of protest around college campuses all over the country, in opposition to the genocide in Palestine and in opposition to the American role in that genocide and the support of Israel with our tax dollars. And so the University of California system has cracked down hard on the protest encampments. They have used the police. In one instance, there were, counter-protesters who were allowed to just kind of run rampant on the pro-Palestinian side. That was allowed to occur for several hours before intervention. And so basically where we're at now is we've had walkouts at UCLA and UC Davis. UAW represents about 48,000 academic workers in this local, so that's, quite a lot of folks spread out throughout the University of California system. Now, the administration is alleging that this is an illegal strike. They filed at the state labor board seeking an injunction to immediately stop it, but the state labor board, and again, these are public sector workers who fall under California's public sector union rules, not the National Labor Relations Board. But the California board said that the university's complaint did not meet its legal standard required for intervention. They didn't make a real determination one way or the other. They didn't say, you're in the clear, UAW, and this is perfectly legal what you're doing. But they also didn't say, you're right, Mr. University President, this is totally illegal. So they didn't intervene. So it appears the strike strategy is very much like in the stand-up strike vein of how UAW handled the big three auto manufacturers. Rather than everyone walking out all at once, it's going to be a lot more strategic, and folks will walk out at various places at various times, which obviously keeps the management on their toes, right? Because they're not exactly sure where it's going to occur, when things are going to happen. And so it kind of adds a layer of chaos to the whole situation. But the union that's on strike, UAW 4811, they represent, like I said, 48,000 folks. It includes various university workers, including graduate student teaching assistants, tutors, researchers, and various academic workers at both UC campuses and the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. And it's also interesting because this happens at the end of the academic year, right? As the classes are ending, your final projects are being turned in, final papers are being turned in, grading is being completed. And so it's going to have a big impact on the final, days of the semester, right? And it's going to impact students across the system. So the university says it's an illegal strike. The state labor board has not made a determination. They certainly haven't intervened to stop the strike yet. The strike began last Monday at UC Santa Cruz. And so it's going to be different times, different colleges across the 10 campuses. The legality of the strike remains up in the air for at least probably 3 more weeks. So we'll see, what plays out over the next few weeks. The union says that UC, the University of California system, has had many chances to resolve its egregious unfair labor practices and has thus far refused to engage. Now 2 more campuses are walking out. And so that was UCLA and UC Davis. Basically, the unfair practice that is being alleged here is that workers' free speech rights were violated when the system leaders called the police to remove the pro-Palestinian demonstrators. And like I said, at UCLA, when they were not protected from an attack by pro-Israel supporters for several hours. And you've had hundreds of arrests, including some members of UAW, have been impacted directly by these arrests. A majority of the union did vote to authorize a strike, which could last all the way until June 30th, potentially. And it was a pretty strong majority, well over 70%, if I recall correctly, voted to authorize the strike. The union is demanding that UC officials negotiate with the pro-Palestinian demonstrators, stop actions hostile towards nonviolent activists, grant amnesty to those facing disciplinary action related to the unrest, and divest from, quote, weapons manufacturers, military contractors, and companies profiting from Israel's war on Gaza. Now, the university says that this is illegal because there's a no strike clause in the union contract. And they also said that basically this is a political strike and not actually a labor strike. But again, the union points to violations of free speech rights, freedom of assembly and association rights, and the arrest and other, crackdowns on dissent that has happened across these campuses. Because an unfair labor practice does have to be tied to your terms and conditions of employment, right? And the contract. You can't, it can't be just a totally political strike. Now, the union's pretty clear it's not that situation. And obviously the state labor board did not agree with the university. So, for now, the strike continues. And I think it's really important that the union has had the back of these folks who have been, attacked by the police, attacked by counter demonstrators. It's not that hard for the university campuses to do the right thing, to respect people's rights, to divest from war and genocide. It's really not that difficult. The university can stop this pretty easily if they wanted to. But it looks like they're going to fight tooth and nail. They've lawyered up and they're, taking this through the process. they're claiming that the pro-Palestinian encampments disrupt normal access to some classes and, quote, impeded our educational mission, which is just very ironic, because I think it's clear that those young folks, primarily young folks, but the diverse number of folks who are out there doing these protests clearly have learned something, and they've learned to speak up. They've learned to speak up against crimes against humanity. And they've learned that, when our tax dollars are funding and fueling these crimes against humanity, that it implicates us as Americans, and that we have a right and a responsibility to speak up. So shout out to the UAW for the work they're doing to defend their members and their willingness to strike over this. It's still going to be decided in terms of the ULP charges and whether or not this strike is shown to be legal or not. So it still could be judged illegal at some point, but we'll find out. Obviously, the campuses are going to be impacted greatly. We don't know where the next one will be. The system is preparing for a strike at Berkeley, though none has been announced yet. But yeah, we'll find out. I also wanted to mention that several unions did sign a press release supporting the campus protesters. It was put out by the UE, United Electrical Workers, but unions representing over 1 million workers released a statement in support of campus protesters at colleges and universities across the country. The unions are members of the National Labor Network for Ceasefire, which we are hoping to speak with them next week. But it was quite a few unions: APWU, the American Postal Workers Union, the flight attendants, IUPAT, the painters, UAW, National Nurses United, Chicago Teachers Union, even a couple SEIU, as well as Local 3000 of the UFCW. So over 1 million members from those unions that all stand in solidarity with the campus protesters. And then the last thing on this that's sort of related, while the academic workers are going on strike and potentially expanding this strike in California, there's also a local international longshore and warehouse union effort to block shipment of Israeli military cargo. And so that is the ILWU. They're meeting in Vancouver next month for their biennial convention. And no doubt there will be some discussions on this and what, dot workers can and can't do and should and shouldn't do when it comes to Israeli military cargo. So lots of things happening in relation to Palestine and the labor movement. I personally am proud to see our labor unions being more vocal and speaking up and taking action. Often throughout our history, organized labor hasn't always been on the right side of foreign policy, frankly, and has often fallen prey to nationalism and militarism. And so it's really important that our labor unions are speaking up for peace and defending and representing our members who are speaking up for peace and who are being victimized in response. So keep your eyes on California. I know it's outside of the South, but that's a huge strike. Nearly 50,000 workers potentially involved, over 10 campuses. It's, stay tuned on that, and we'll see, what happens with it this summer and the legality of the strike. But one of the themes of today's conversations, I think, is that, laws are one thing, but power is something else. And so whether the strike is deemed illegal or illegal, it's really the power behind it that's going to be impactful and make a difference as to whether it makes a lasting impact and makes a lasting difference.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
Let's see, caller. You're the only one on the line, so I don't have your area code pulled up. But what's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name's Peter, and I'm a student worker at UAW 4811. So I heard you were talking about our strike.
Hell yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Well, hey, yeah, thanks for calling in. And, yeah, what's on your mind? What did you want to share with us?
Well, I don't know where to start, but I guess I would emphasize that the strike has really been pushed forward by rank and file organizing, and I think we need to look for support in the rest of the labor movement. So we're trying to organize a LA-wide rally here at UCLA and invite unionists and workers from and Palestine activists from around the city, and we're going to have a powerful strike. We are very militant, I think, and I think we're going to really be working to shut down the university, and so.
Do you feel like the momentum is on your side in terms of talking to your fellow workers and them really realizing what the strike is about, the stakes involved, and I mean, do you feel it's going in the right direction in terms of the support that you're getting from your fellow workers and members at large?
I think opinion has changed over the last few weeks. I think seeing a fascist mob attack students on campus certainly changed people's minds about some things.
Right.
Brought new people into this. So
that's what I was
been
wondering.
One achievement of the organizing.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. If just like the way things are developing, I would imagine would have to wake up some folks who maybe were on the fence, a couple weeks ago. Yeah, I mean, and so I'm curious also in terms of support from the other labor unions and getting broader labor support. Would love to, hear how that's going, but also just wish you success in that, because I think that's going to be really important that, that y'all are not isolated and that there's broad support from our entire movement for your strike and for, the defense of your own members.
Yeah, absolutely. We have, I think it's around 10 unions at the University of California, but we all, have our own contracts and we go out separately. But rank and file workers in UPD and AFT and AFSCME have supported us. Roofers Union, ATU. I've seen a couple of rank and file members here and there. So, yeah, I mean, I think we have to sort of all go out together when, an injury to one is an injury to all. So, yeah, I would call on, workers in other unions to join our picket lines and join the strike.
Yeah.
What was it that, what were the things that initiated the protests insofar as as it relates to the University of California? I know that, obviously they're in opposition to Israel's, attacks on Gaza. But is there something in particular about the University of California system? Do they have some tie to the Israeli military that the protests are aimed at eliminating?
Sure. Well, the protests were started primarily by undergraduate organizers and, really set off by the wave of university protests, beginning with Columbia University. Here at the University of California, this is a major institution in the state. It controls over $100 billion in assets. And among those assets, there are, investments in military contractors of who knows how much exactly, but it's in the billions of dollars. And so, the students are calling on them to disclose the investment, since we are only partially aware of what they include. But there's no doubt that they include very substantial investments in BlackRock, which is the world's biggest private investor in military contractors, also direct investments in military contractors. And then, you have the university's relationship with Israeli universities, and the list goes on. So, you also get DoD funding. So those are the sorts of things that students are targeting.
And why do you think it is that the university system clamped down so violently against the protests, and that they allowed, this real fascist mob to attack its own undergraduates?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I mean, it seems to be a nationwide policy that they really don't want these protests there, and I think it's I think it's a huge public relations failure, not only for the university but for the Democratic Party and the political establishment. And the university regents, who are the top decision-making body in the university, they're basically a lot of them are multimillionaires, political operatives. I think many of them, 18, I think, are directly appointed by the governor. So, and he actually sits on the board of regents himself. So, I find it hard to believe that city and state government weren't to some degree aware of what was happening the night of April 30th. We've seen how fast the police response can be, but in this case, the fascists were allowed to attack students for 3+ hours without any kind of impediment. And so, yeah, I would say that the union really needs to put together some sort of tribunal or committee that would conduct an independent investigation of what happened that night, and in particular, the role of the chancellor and the Karen Bass, the mayor, and Governor Newsom in standing down the police to let that attack go ahead.
Yeah,
Right.
I think that's a really good point. I mean, a very good point. And I think getting to the facts of that and who was really behind it all and who knew what, I think that's really important. And I appreciate what you mentioned earlier about the university connections to the broader machine, because there are some folks listening who may think, well, what does this really have to do with their jobs?
Right.
But it has a lot to do with their jobs. I mean, beyond the fact that you should be able to be on your campus without fear of attack, when your own pensions are invested in genocide, that's a valid question, right? I mean, it's fair for us to ask these questions. And I think the repression that we're seeing in response, I mean, is indicative of their guilt, frankly. And it reminds me of the crackdown on Occupy Wall Street when, it seemed like that, and we found out later there was a coordinated national move to clear out encampments and to, try to dismantle this movement. So I really appreciate you calling in and appreciate you, shedding some light on it. I don't know if there was anything else you wanted to share and make sure we...
Well, yeah, I had two more questions.
Okay.
If it was all right, or
you made the mistake of calling, so now you're on the hot seat.
Is that all right? Are you all right with that, caller?
Oh yeah, that's fine.
Okay, yeah, cool. Have you been able to? Has the union been able to get the university to the bargaining table yet?
Well, I believe the Public Employees Relations Board has compelled the university and the union to negotiate behind closed doors. But the union has said publicly that it wants the university to negotiate with the student movement over its demands. And so this isn't really something for the union to, the union's executive board to decide for the student movement. We have our interest in this fight for sure. Our members were attacked. People were injured quite badly, 25 sent to the emergency room on April 30th, and then injured again the following day, police firing rubber bullets indiscriminately into the crowd. So that's a workplace safety issue.
Right.
We also have students that are being charged with criminal misdemeanors and student conduct charges, probably. So we want amnesty for the students. But more importantly, really, we want to uplift the demands of the student movement, and we want the university to negotiate with the students rather than trying to attack them with police. And the police actually still have a lot of presence on this campus, have had a presence here for 3 weeks. And, the following Monday, after the encampment was attacked by police, more people were arrested because they were gathering in a parking garage about to stage a peaceful protest. And they were just arrested for gathering. They said they were violating a curfew. And then later they changed the charge to criminal conspiracy to commit burglary because they were going to go sit in an inside a building. So I mean, they're really upping the policing of the campus. They've established a new office of campus safety headed by this guy, Rick Braziel, who has a sordid history as a police chief and was involved in the inquiry around Uvalde and finding none of the police guilty of any wrongdoing there. So,
just
you know,
who you
we're
want,
against
then. Great. Yeah.
And then the final question, I figured, you know, while we have you, it'd be good to just get your response to this. And, you know, we've been responding to this narrative that, you know, everybody from Joe Biden to racist Mississippi frat boys have been saying about these protests, which is that they are, you know, drenched in anti-Semitism and all of that kind of nonsense. And so, you know, as somebody who, you know, I don't know if you've been involved in the protest, but obviously you're involved with the union at the University of California, and you've at least been aware of these protests and you know, interacted with folks involved in them. How would you respond to these, you know, accusations of anti-Semitism and the like?
Yeah, well, first of all, we do have a caucus, rank and file caucus, that has been actually a part of the divestment coalition, and we've been a part of helping organize the protests. And among the leaders of the caucus are many Jewish students, actually, and Jewish Voice for Peace is an organization that's also a member of that coalition. So one of the encampment leads, who's since been doxxed very badly, is Jewish. And so, no, the accusations of anti-Semitism are absolutely absurd. Our side was not violent. They were incredibly peaceful. The atmosphere in the encampment was great. You know, we had a people's library and teach-ins and assemblies and things like that. But, you know, we were attacked and harassed relentlessly for a week, culminating with, you know, 200 plus fascists attacking people with metal poles and fireworks. So, yeah, it's utterly false.
Appreciate it. Thanks for calling in, and feel free to call in anytime to keep us updated.
Yeah, definitely do that, and appreciate all you're doing, and good luck and solidarity, brother.
Okay, thanks. Solidarity.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.